Welcome back, College Baseball Central fans. We're joined by a big-time player in the portal and then also potentially the MLB draft this offseason, Mike Boeve, the 2022 Summit League Player of the Year out of Omaha, UNO. We'll get into it, whatever you want to call it. There's little bit of a controversial name for that school around our group chat. Mike, how are you doing tonight?
Good, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, man, anytime. So first off, how often does your name kind of get butchered at opposing stadiums? Does it ever get mispronounced, or are they usually pretty good about it?
Great question because it's pretty frequent. Boeve is a typical one, and Bove's kind of a nickname back home too. So that's another common pronunciation.
What's been the worst one that you've heard?
Back in high school, at least, I got called Boar one time because my dad's handwriting in the lineup card, the V looked like an R. So they called me Mike Boar when I went up to the plate. That was pretty bad.
So recruited out of high school, kind of a smaller school. What was kind of your recruiting process like out of high school?
Yeah, it was really only two Division I schools that I was looking at. Obviously, Omaha, and then Valparaiso through my junior spring. And then I kind of got hurt at the end of that year. Knew I wasn't really going to get looked at in the summer. Ended up committing to UNO right after that spring year, my junior season, and it was the best thing that could have happened to me. Kind of lucky that I didn't get recruited by the bigger schools because I'm sure as a high school kid I would have been intrigued with what they had. But kind of lightly recruited and glad I ended up at Omaha.
What was the moment that you, maybe in high school, maybe earlier, kind of looked around and realized that you were better than a lot of players on the field?
Yeah, I think it's probably when I came back from that injury my junior year. I had about 2 months fully off of baseball in the summer, and I didn't come back till the postseason. They called the area, the kind of the districts. Um, I started at DH and just to kind of ease my way back into it, and I kind of picked up right where I left off. I kind of just kept hitting, and that's kind of when I realized, obviously you work hard, but taking 2 months off and you still um, can hold yourself to a high level. That's kind of when I noticed at the high school level.
When did you kind of notice that you had a chance to play professionally?
Yeah, I always say it was probably in the Northwoods League. Not really during my first spring here at UNO, but in the summer in the Northwoods League, when you start playing against guys from a bunch of different schools, you're really around the game a lot more, especially with playing every day. So definitely during the Northwoods League.
Your dad kind of played college baseball as well. Did that kind of benefit you, hurt you? What'd you learn through the process with him?
100% benefited me. He played at Northwestern in Iowa, where my sister ended up playing for 5 years, and then he coached at Hastings College. So I grew up going to the ball field, watching his practices. When he came home from work, it was still talking about baseball. So that was a huge part in me getting where I am today.
So I alluded to it at the beginning here, but I call it UNO all the time because I went to UNO and I've known it as UNO my whole life. Is it UNO or is it Omaha?
That's a really tough question. To be honest, most times I catch myself saying Omaha. Most times I probably say Omaha.
All right. That goes a long way in our chat because I always get told that I'm talking about New Orleans when
Yeah, every time he says Uno, I think of the University of New Orleans.
That's what's hard about it. Yep. And sometimes when you say UNO, it's misheard as UNL. Don't
Yeah.
ask me why, but that's why I stick to Omaha.
And I think a lot of people nationally wouldn't even think what UNL could possibly mean, but we know.
Yeah.
Jake,
Yes.
do you know what UNL is?
You mean the University of Nebraska?
That is correct, but it is tricky.
I only know that because I had to stay in a hotel in Lincoln for Omaha one year and commute. And I was like, oh, the University of Nebraska is in Lincoln?
Okay.
Before you started Omaha, you played a little bit of summer baseball. How did seeing the college pitching kind of help you transition from high school into college?
Yeah, the speed of the game adjustment was huge to get 3 weeks of that in. Um, and then I think just a sense of belonging. Stepping into college baseball can be kind of nerve wracking at first. And I think getting a little prequel of, even if it was summer ball, when guys are on their, their arms are hanging and people are tired. I think that was huge for me mentally more than anything, and just kind of interacting with some of the college guys. There was some teammates there that were obviously older than me and kind of welcomed me as the high school kid that were really awesome.
What was kind of your welcome to college baseball moment where you saw the next step up in competition, and how did you kind of respond from that?
Gosh, that's a really good question. If I had to say, it might come into practice, to be honest. Um, in the winter we do indoor live at bats because obviously you can't get outside, and it's at a place where it's a little hard to pick up the ball. And we had a closer my freshman year who fortunately got hurt, but he was 94, 95 from sidearm. And I think one of my first live at bats was against him. And it was kind of when everything was getting wrapped up, and so everybody was watching that one at bat. Because there really wasn't something in a game that I felt like, but in practices, that was the first time I was like, okay, whoa.
So you had a fantastic start on campus at UNO. You settled in pretty quickly. After that sophomore season where you won that Summit League Player of the Year, were there programs trying to get at you, trying to say, why don't you come take a look at our program and transfer?
Not really. I think I made it pretty clear that, obviously they can't contact you, but I was going to stay at UNO for that third year. I really like the coaching staff. I really hadn't thought about transferring, during that summer, that off season. So not really.
What made you really kind of want to come back after being away in the summer?
Just the relationships I made. I really like the city, first off, and then the university, of course, and then I have a great set of roommates that I've been the same three roommates I met my freshman year that I roomed with. We stayed the next year and then this year. So 3 years in a row with those guys, and then the teammates and the coaches. Once again, the relationships I made, top to bottom at Omaha.
With those guys, what were kind of your goals headed into the 2023 season?
Yeah, the goals were obviously to win the Summit League championship. Always wanting to kind of play in the regional was always something on my mind. And when I committed, that was something on my mind. We ran into an Oral Roberts team that is having a heck of a year. But I think we just wanted to enjoy it and see each other and the team improve as a whole.
Each year as a player, you've kind of increased your batting average. How has your approach changed, and how have kind of scouts helped you along that process for what they want to see?
Yeah, I think, one of the main things is trying to stick to what I can do best. Not trying to be somebody I'm not. So I'm not a big pull hitter, not a big home run guy, at the moment. That's something I tried to, grow on once I got into college. But at the end of the day, I'm, really good at laying off of good pitches, knowing what I like in certain counts, using the whole field. So just kind of using that to work on other parts of my game as I went on through college. And the big thing for me was just being more aggressive. My freshman year and even into my sophomore year, 95% of my bats, I was, auto taking a strike, which seems crazy now looking back. But I got to summer ball this summer at YD, and Pickler was one of his big things was swinging at the first pitch. So that was kind of, I knew I'd have to adjust eventually, but that was my wake up call to make that adjustment. And so that was something I really tried to work on this past year.
What's been your favorite memory at UNO?
Favorite memory at UNO? Gosh. There's probably a lot of memories I really can't talk about, but gosh, one of them's got to be Drew Reitz was my in and out buddy at third base. And he, I don't want to say anything that I shouldn't, but he was kind of a bench guy. He was out there to have fun. He knew his role, which was awesome. Kept things light out there for me. So, in and out, if I had these cameras on me with scouts, he would, do anything in his power to make it as weird as possible when he would field the ground balls, because they'd set up their cameras and just do whatever, take notes. So they'd be filming him too, and he had he would do some crazy things that we got videos of that are just hilarious.
How does a midweek at a school like UNO look facing some of these elite kind of SEC level arms? How do you kind of take that into your weekend series where there is kind of a little bit of a step down just in terms of velocity and in competition?
Yeah, I think the midweeks against those higher level opponents is a really good time to see, at least pitching wise, what guys we can rely on come the weekend. Because obviously you have your weekend starters that are never going to throw in a midweek. But if you want to make a run come tourney time, it takes a few extra bullpen arms that might not be throwing on weekends. So I think those midweeks are super important for us to see guys compete and, not go out there timid or scared against these bigger schools.
How has your experience in summer ball kind of changed over the years from when you were thrown in there before you were even in college to last summer where you were gearing up for potentially going pro this year?
Yeah, all 3 summers I think I've been very fortunate with the coaches, and then the 2 summers on the road, my host families have been great. It's something I like, going out there and being around different people, hearing different ways to approach the game or do certain things in the game. And the coaches at both places have been great too. And at the end of the day, when you're playing every day, you're going to see yourself improve quite a bit.
What's been your favorite memory in summer ball?
Summer ball favorite memory. One of them from Duluth. We forgot about a trash bag we left in the back bathroom of the charter bus. So our bus driver had to pick it up, and the next day, it was after like a 7-8 day road trip, so it was just loaded. It smelled terrible. The next day we had early BP, which turned out to be an hour of picking up every item of trash on the field and an hour of conditioning. So no BP before the game. That's what we did.
That'll humble you guys. You guys are starting to smell the big bucks, and now you got to clean up a bus.
You mentioned you had a coach that really challenged you to hit at the first pitch. Do you think that that's something that you took into the season, or did you find yourself kind of going back to what had worked for you previously in your collegiate seasons?
That was definitely something I took going into this season. The coaches at YD, they gave you a ton of information. And at times it was, obviously I wanted to try things out, but it was kind of hard during the season to do it. But the second that season ended, I had the fall and the winter to work on things. I don't think I realized at the moment how good that was for me to, kind of be around things like that.
Just to kind of talk about another fellow Summit League opponent that's gone on a little bit of a run here, what do you think's kind of been the secret to Oral Roberts' success? And do you think there's something that you kind of have taken away in their game that you think you could do?
Yeah, I think top to bottom, their whole roster loves being around each other and loves playing together. And I think that is ultimately how you make a deep postseason run, because you don't get tired of showing up to the field every day. And they're a very mature group, veteran group of guys. 1 through 9, they have transfers. They have guys that have been in the program and kind of know the culture they've set. And that goes with their pitching staff too. I think watching, maybe the belief that, if they get in and they can compete with anybody, I think that's something that everyone can take from them.
With that talk of other Summit League teams and then seeing them play in some big time environments now, what's your favorite stadium that you've played in your career?
Ooh, good question. Probably Baumwalker down in Arkansas. Even for a midweek, those fans can get pretty rowdy down there. So that's probably what I'd say.
I remember when you guys were going to play Arkansas in Kauffman Stadium, and then that one it got canceled. I was blown away when that happened.
Yes, I know. That was very disappointing.
What's been the worst stadium that you've gone to?
Oh, man. You have to pick one. Being in the Summit League, you see some gosh. Oh, I don't know how to say this. This year,
You're transferring. They can't plunk you. You're transferring.
Missouri State. in a midweek. We played Missouri State in a midweek at the Urban Youth Academy in Kansas City. And, obviously it was field turf. It was a nice playing surface, but there was no foul territory. The backstop was 4 feet away. There was no music during pregame because it was just like it was like a high school showcase is what it felt like. And then obviously there's places like when we played South Dakota State this year, we played a high school field. I mean, Western Illinois is not a great place. Didn't have to go there this year. Macomb's a heck of a place. So there's a lot you can name.
I was smart. You were naming neutral sites at first, but then you just couldn't hold off against Western Illinois.
Yeah.
What's the best Summit League stadium? We're going to hold you to that one. Who's kind of the best one that you've seen?
Behind Tal Anderson, of course, it's probably or Roberts. North Dakota State has a nice one up in Fargo. And a personal favorite of mine actually is in St. Thomas because it's right on their campus. Their dorms are on the first base and third base side. It's small seating, but it feels like it's loud when you're there. So that's probably the sleeper pick.
Is it kind of weird to be? Oh, sorry, Jake.
I was going to say we're going to do a 3-parter for you. Who was the best player you played against in high school? Who was the best player you saw in a summer league? And then who's the best player you played against in your Summit time?
I could probably pick Max Anderson for the first two, but I'll pick him just for high school ball. He was unbelievable. He still is an unbelievable hitter, obviously. Summit League guy, summer ball guy I played with, Cole Carrig. He had an unreal summer out in the Cape with us. Just hit everything. He had 1 or 2 week stretches where it seemed like he never got out. And then the Summit League. I mean, how do I not say Jonah Cox after this year? He's gotten to hit 40 some straight games, something ridiculous. Or you always brings out a stud like that. And then from my freshman year, I remember North Dakota State had a shortstop, Bennett Hostetler, who's in the Marlins organization now. And as a freshman, he was one of the best players I can remember seeing.
Has there been a pitcher that has kind of had a lot of success against you that your teammates have kind of hit off of?
Maybe. I mean, none of our guys have had success off this guy, Ryan Barassa from South Dakota State. He has had my number. He's got a really good splitter, and a righty changeup's probably the pitch I'm weakest at. So he definitely has my number.
Mike, just to kind of change gears, you're obviously in the transfer portal. What kind of led you to enter your name into it after having the last 3 years?
Yeah, obviously I'm grateful for my time in Omaha, but mentally I'm ready to play professionally. And I think if things, if something falls through or something goes wrong, I'm kind of already mentally ready for that change of scenery. And so I would be ready to play for, a bigger school that has a chance to get back to Omaha. Funny enough. So yeah, just kind of keep my options open.
It's probably really hard to detail, but what's that kind of situation like where you're looking at the MLB draft and you say, if X and Y happens, I'm gonna stay in the portal and I'm gonna go somewhere else and continue playing in college?
It's still kind of early. It's been maybe a week I think since it happened. So you're talking to a few schools. You're still getting reached out to by a few, but I think it's something I'll just, as the draft gets closer, I'll give it more consideration. But right now it's something that's still kind of new.
What are your kind of goals and plans personally with your hitting game that you think you could improve on before next year? Which again, at your average is very hard to kind of pick one.
Obviously I think it's probably just hitting more balls over the fence. Simple enough. And, I want to find a way to do that, to hit more home runs without sacrificing any other part of my game, whether, obviously it's going to be hard to hit 400 at, the next level. That's not going to happen. But things like taking my walks and not striking out too much, I want to try to stay good at those things while still, knocking some more balls out of the park.
If you end up staying in the portal after the MLB draft, what are the kind of those factors that you're going to be really heavily weighing as you decide where you're going to be attending school next year?
Yeah, it's going to be it's a little easier to decide than when you're 16 years old in high school. It seems weird that you have to decide when you're that young, but just somewhere that I know the coaching staff would believe in me. and I know would trust in what I can do, and just really likes me as a player and a person. Most importantly, you know, a winning program somewhere where I feel like I can step right in, and it's a good fit for me, and you know, I'd be comfortable putting on that uniform for a year.
What does the draft process kind of look like for you? Like, do you have scouts kind of blowing up your phone like in the movies, or is it kind of more of a, in the dark, like I think this is where I go, but really don't have any idea?
Good question. So I really personally don't have, you know, a thought of where exactly I would go. All, you know, kind of that side of it is kind of for the advisors to handle. Um, but you know, just up until the draft, I'm not doing any of the pre-draft workouts, or I'll head down to the combine and do interviews there. But none of the workouts there either. I think that's more for, you know, the high school guys. So it's just kind of staying fresh, you know, being ready to play if your name does get called and you get sent to rookie ball or whatever right away. So just kind of things like that.
Who's all in your corner right now, and what does your team look like, and what kind of facilities are you going to be using to stay fresh in between now and the combine?
Yeah, well, thankfully, our weights guy at Omaha has been huge for me. He's still, you know, allowing me to work out there, and then, you know, staying fresh hitting wise. I headed back to Hastings for a weekend. Got to hit off the real pitching machine, as my dad calls it, is his right arm. So just doing different things like that, stay fresh.
What's been the weirdest question that you've been asked in an interview?
Really good question. One of them was that I'll never forget was, do you keep your peanut butter in the fridge? And I still have not figured out why that matters and translates to the baseball field, but that is on an actual questionnaire.
A questionnaire for what? Like what context? Who's collecting that information?
Yeah, was that an MLB scout or like
It
somebody
was
from
an
like the
MLB
Uno
team.
newspaper? An MLB
It was a major league team, yeah.
Huh. I guess we'll find out if you answered correctly.
I mean, I know. I'm sure there's a method to their madness. So,
Who would you say is your MLB player comp? Who do you kind of model your game after?
another really good question. Swing wise, when I was a kid, I always tried to swing like Joe Mauer. That's kind of who my dad had me swing like. And then, um, you know, shooting big. We grew up Cardinals fans, so it's nice to see their corner infield now, with Arenado obviously being at third and me being a third baseman, and then Goldschmidt, just with how he plays the game. And then, you know, kind of the hero figure for me was Albert Pujols growing up as a kid.
Yeah, I'm a Cardinal fan too, and I was about to ask if Pujols was your favorite growing up, but that answers that
Easily.
one.
Yep.
Yeah. It was great to see him come back last year. That was really special.
Oh, yeah.
But Jake, that's all I have. I don't know if you have anything else.
Oh, yeah, he hit every doc that I have as well.
Well, thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thank you guys. This was awesome.
Yeah. Good luck.
Best of luck to you. Yeah, I was gonna say hopefully you get drafted and we are done covering you in college and all your draft dreams get fulfilled.
Yes. Well, thank you guys. Really appreciate it. Really like following your Twitter page too.
Thank you.